Yeah. You live in the bush. I was telling Tana where a red devil is, and I'm like, man, that is, people think King Salmon's remote. Red Devil is super, super middle of nowhere.
Red Devil's about as remote as it gets. Yes, it is. There's like 16 people there at post office. That's it. We're one post office away from being nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your upbringing then. A little bit about your Alaska life and kind of how you got into the whole bushcraft.
Yeah, the whole thing with Alaska, well, bushcraft, I've been an avid student, pupil, studier, practitioner of bushcraft since 8 years old, possibly 6 or 7, but very vividly in my mind, it began at 8 because that's when I began my first trap line. And trapping is kind of key to bushcraft, whether it's steel leg hold or snares or deadfalls or whatever. I had steel leg hold traps, some older ones. They were a Model 21 jump style trap with a twist in the pan mechanism. Very rare trap. My uncle, my dad's brother, gave me a dozen of them. I'd been seeing some raccoon tracks down along the creek. I mean, this is 8 years old. You're a boy. And they didn't go with me and say, oh, here, they didn't set it all up for me. They give me the traps, showed me how to set them in the yard real quick, and, just kind of explained how you go make a pocket set for raccoon. And I did it. I went and I got a really big raccoon that year. And it was back in the 80s when fur was actually worth something. And so actually my uncle bought fur. So I sold it to him and skunned it for him. And from 8 to 17, he was a local country buyer on the carcass, and I skinned everything for him over the years and became very proficient with knife. That was probably one of the major stepping stones. And there was my love of camping out. I was the kid that would jump off the school bus on a Friday afternoon, and we lived a long way from the school. So it took forever, the bus, to get me home. I was always so jealous of the town kids getting home earlier than me. But when they finally did spew us out, I grabbed my shit and go, camp out in a rainstorm in my pop tent by myself because nobody'd seldom go. And that's just the kind of person I was. And it led me. So I find that Alaska was always a dream. At 24, I just drove up and made that dream happen. And when I actually went to work for Wayne Woods, which is a well-known master guide out of Palmer. That was my first gig. And he flew us all out he had a big year that year. I was packing, of course, because I, just got there. He hired me as a packer. I call it my apprentice year. And I'd seen that lifestyle, living in wall tent, hunting every day, and just grabbed onto it and never left go after that.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of how my experience was first coming to Alaska. I had one experience hunting that just drew me to it, and I was like, I can't leave this place. So was there like a particular moment that made you just make that decision of I'm never leaving, or was it just that first year being a packer that you fell in love with Alaska?
It was probably the moment we landed in Western Alaska and set up the wall tents and a bull moose walk through camp. It's just, and flying from Anchorage to Western Alaska, beholding all that country, until you've flown over Western Alaska.
Hang on, connection.
Yeah, I see that.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, I still got it.
Okay, go ahead. You said until you fly over Western Alaska.
Right. When you fly from Anchorage to Western Alaska and get a dose of that kind of country available, it's just, if you're made like me and whoever else is in love with the wilderness, it grabs you and doesn't never let you go.
Yep. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's how one of my mentors flying. I grew up in Southwest Alaska, kind of flying beavers and stuff. I say growing up like 17 on, and for fishing lodges, they utilize the beaver so much. And one of my mentors said, once Alaska kind of gets into your blood, it gets its hooks in you, and you're not going to be getting out of that.
Yeah, right on. The beaver's an awesome airplane, dude. Wow.
Yeah, that was kind of our goal. Not to own a beaver, but move up here. And we both grew up in Idaho and just moved to Alaska like you. And once we moved here full time, we've been here about 4 years. We bought a cub and didn't want to leave, and just love exploring the state. And yeah, it is crazy when you fly over the Alaska range like that. You're I'm in some big country right now, and it can be kind of daunting at times when you're out there and all the way out there in the middle of nowhere by yourself and just you and your tools, and you got to make it happen.
Yeah, it's daunting, but it's addicting. It's better than drugs.
Yep.
For sure.
It's great.
So with your experience in guiding and starting as a packer, kind of talk about that transition from being a packer to a guide, maybe some cool experiences that you had. Did you ever have bear encounters? And just talk a little bit about that part of your background.
Yeah, from packer to guide was pretty easy in 1995 or whatever it was. You only needed your outfitter's endorsement back then. And, if you were worth a shit, they would endorse you. And if you weren't, they wouldn't. And now that they've got it too complicating, there's more to getting your assistant license now. And I think that kind of sucks because they have the registered guide really stringent, which is good. But for the young guy trying to get in, it's tough now with all the roadblocks they put in front of you. So anyway, I went from packer to assistant guide the very next year because of my trophy handling ability. That's kind of where you separate the men from the boys. And so, running your own camp, 25, I guess I was pretty heady. And it was back when the caribou was strong. There was game galloping all over the place, good moose herd, grizzly bears, of course. And, at that age, you just want to kill it all. And they just kept sending me in dudes tags, and I kept tagging them out. It was pretty sweet. It was more fun back when you're assistant guiding and backing.
Yeah. So are you just a one-man show, or do you have other guides work for you and stuff?
No, it's just me. I take care of my own guiding. It's really hard to control well, go back to, you can't get nobody, like before you could just recommend somebody and they could grab an assistant license and fill in. You'd have to keep their camp close and keep an eye. But now, like I said, the damn state has the licensing so overboard for assistant guiding that there's a real shortage of assistant guides. I just do all my own stuff. I'm booked up pretty solid. Everybody wants to hunt with the 100-day man now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got some good PR, I bet.
Good.
I've been advertising myself, just word of mouth. I really don't do a lot of advertising, but and I can kind of bear this out. I'm one of the best guides in Alaska right now, and that sounds pretty arrogant to say, but I'm 49 years old. Been doing it 25 years. That's quite a long time. You kind of get stuff figured out. You get real smart in your 40s. From 40 on, you're smart. And I've retained my physical. I can do anything I could ever do. Packing moose, packing sheep, make it all happen. Still, now when I lose my physical, I won't be able to make that claim. But right now, I'd go up against anybody at all. Absolutely.
That's
Feels
awesome.
Good.
Yeah.
Feels good to be on top.
That's great. What's your favorite animal to hunt in Alaska?
I'm still really into Dall sheep because I do still have my physical. Someday I'm probably going to have to phase out Dall sheep, but it's no time too soon.
Thank you for tuning in to our podcast episode. To continue on with this episode, make sure to click the link in the description.